Let me ask you, you've got Sting obviously doing similar stunts, from the top of the arena and rappelling down and things like that. Were there conversations or concerns about Sting doing something in the rafters, given what we just saw happen with Owen?
Absolutely. From Steve Borden, who played the character Sting, himself, Steve had strong questions, doubts, moral issues. By this time, Sting had fully embraced a strong connection to his faith. He had issues. I want to be sure he was doing the right thing for himself. Um, I, I, again, same situation. I had to check myself to make sure that I was doing the right thing all the way around for everybody, the right thing. A lot of talent. Again, a lot of people that were in my locker room that had spent a lot of time in the WWE locker room with Owen. And I never met one of those people that didn't speak about Owen in just the most respectful, loving way. There's nobody that will badmouth Owen. Everybody loved him that knew him. So same thing, everybody had issues with it. And we just talked through it. Started from the top down. Sting, how do you feel? Let's dig in and figure this out. Because if Steve Borden would have said, I'm not comfortable doing it anymore, that's the end of the conversation. None of the rest of it mattered. What I wanted to do, what my choice is, all the other elements of a decision like that doesn't matter. If the talent doesn't want to do it, that's the end of the conversation. But there was more to it than that. And Steve and I talked through it, and Steve agreed that he was comfortable. I had a lot of conversations with Ellis Edwards, who was our stunt guy. He set that stunt up. He created that stunt. He executed every one of them that Sting did in that Crow character era flawlessly. Not only with Sting, but with others. Sting hauling DDP up from the ground is another one. So Ellis was instrumental in the conversation as to whether to move forward with that stunt or not. Once I got through those two conversations and felt comfortable with them, then now it's up to me. What do I want to do? I made my decision, and then it went downhill from there. Downhill meaning then I went down. Then I got the downstream conversations had to happen. Talent, production, everybody else. Those conversations took place, and we made the decision we made. Good or bad, take your pick.
If things would have wound up a little differently, I mean, we know that after the Montreal screw job, Bret Hart's going to come to WCW. David Boy Smith is going to come to WCW. Jim Neidhart is going to come to WCW. Rick Rude is going to come to WCW. Owen Hart never does. Owen Hart winds up re-signing, staying with the WWF. Do you think perhaps if Owen would have came over to WCW, I mean, I don't think he would have been in the rafters. Certainly that might not have happened. But do you think that Brett's WCW run could have been different as well if Owen would have joined him? Do you think maybe, Brett would have had more fun and things turned out a little differently for Brett and WCW had Owen been there?
Undoubtedly. And I'm so firm in that because I met Bret Hart at the airport immediately after Owen was announced to have passed. Bret was in midair at that point in time. Bret was on his way to Los Angeles to meet me, or I was there. I was at the airport to meet Bret on that flight. It was a later night flight. I think he got in around 10 or 11 or whatever it was. And I didn't know that the Air Canada was able to find a way to reach the captain on the flight that Bret Hart was on his way to LA to meet me. I didn't know that happened. This is long before cell phones and Wi-Fi on your plane and the ability to whatever text and all that. None of that existed. So I went to the airport knowing what had happened, knowing that believing that Brett was going to come off the plane and not know. So I had to prepare myself to be the one to tell him. I'm just giving you the context. Brett got off the plane, and the minute I laid eyes on him, there was hardly anybody at the airport that night. Again, it was a later night flight in the terminal. And I spotted Brett from, halfway across the terminal, and I could tell he already knew. And from that point forward, that was a heavy bag to carry. That was some heavy luggage that Brett carried with him all the time. So you asked me, do you think it would have been different? Absolutely would have been different. I don't know how. Only Brett can answer that. But I know how bad the situation was and how much it hurt Brett. Only common sense would suggest that not having that baggage, things would have been different, right? So yeah, I'm 100% sure things would have been different.
We just saw Conan tagging with Rey Mysterio Jr. to take on Bobby Duncombe Jr. and Kurt Hennig. They had a lot of fun. Conan and Mysterio are going to pick up the win in just under 5 minutes. I want to ask one more thing about Bret Hart, and then we'll move along here. We talked about this before. Kevin Nash had been on the Tonight Show throwing out this open challenge. He's wanting to go after Bret Hart. He's saying that, he's not been a supporter of our federation, blah, blah, blah. And he's throwing out a challenge here. And we know that Bret was supposed to be there, and you just sort of ran through how you're getting word to the pilot. And well, all the silly wrestling stuff goes out the window when this real life stuff happens with Owen. But I think that this match that we were teasing here, Bret Hart and Kevin Nash, was supposed to happen maybe at the Astrodome here. So maybe that's another reason, while a lot of the critics are ready to pile on and say, oh, they're less than half of where they were last time. Well, they had Bam Bam Bigelow and Goldberg with the undefeated streak for the world title on deck there that have been promoted to headline. And you were probably building towards Bret and Kevin Nash here, but that's obviously out the window. Not trying to make excuses, just trying to add context. You did have a big plan here. It just got derailed. Life got in the way.
Yeah, like I said, Bret was on his way to sit down with Jay Leno on the Tonight Show, which at that time, people say whatever they want. People that weren't around back then don't realize how big of a platform, Jay Leno's Tonight Show was. It was probably the best opportunity on television to get the word out to our audience, the 18 to 49-year-old audience and above. And Bret was on his way to do that, to launch this. And things could have been different, right? Easy to point fingers when you've never been in the business. Easy to have solutions and astute observations about something you've never experienced.